Namaste. Warm greetings to all the participants and role takers present in the meeting room. On behalf of Ratha Bangla School and Ratha Bangla Kitab team, I, Japitana, would like to welcome you all to the virtual Bal Sahitya Mahotsav 2022 and to this phenomenal session, The Power of Storytelling in Early Years. Please help me welcome our presenter for this morning, Ms. Amabel Theresa Japitana. Miss Amabel has an MS Ed in Early Childhood and Childhood Education from Bank Street College of New York. Over the past 12 years, she has been working in early childhood education. She has had a range of roles. She has taught in progressive schools in NYC and the Philippines and was recently involved in curriculum work and teacher mentoring at Bank Street Inspired School in Manila. In 2016, she visited Nepal and conducted a workshop on storytelling for Ratha Bangla School and Foundation. She's also one of the co-founder of Kind Little Human PH, a project that aims to provide grown-ups with tools, tips, and resources to support young children's social and emotional well-being. Today, she's here with us to share her expertise in early childhood education and also to share the value of storytelling in early years. Before we begin, I would like to request you all to stay in mute mode. And if you have any questions regarding the sharing, please note them down. We'll have a question and answer segment at the end of the session. And please note down if you have any questions. So now please help me welcome Ms. Amabel to conduct this inspirational session relating with the theme of this year's BSM, Social and Emotional Learning Through Literature. Ms. Amabel.
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Ms. Shilpa. And hello and good morning to all the participants. Thank you for spending an hour of your morning with me today. I feel very honored to have been asked to join this year's Literature Festival. Back in 2016, when I visited Nepal, I had a wonderful time at Ratha Bangla School and with the foundation and learning about Ratha Bangla Kitab and the wonderful efforts that are in place to really promote local literature in Nepal, local children's literature. So again, I'm just really, really happy to be here and thank you for inviting me. Today, we are going to be talking about the power of children's literature or the power of storytelling. So not just technically children's literature, but stories in general for children, for very young children. And so I'm going to start off by presenting my slides. So give me 1 second, please. I'm just going to share my slides. All right, so I hope everybody can see my slides now, and we can begin our presentation for today. Today we are talking about the power of storytelling in the early years. This talk is for parents, teachers, and carers of young children. So anyone who is in the business of raising young children. And storytelling is really a topic that is something I'm really passionate about. Storytelling, stories, books have really taken, especially in recent years, have really taken a central place in my teaching practice and in my work with teachers. So I hope you all enjoy the session today and take away something from this session about storytelling and hopefully be inspired to be more intentional with how you use storytelling with your preschoolers or young children. So I always like to start any workshops that I do with a little bit of reflection. And so I'd like to ask all of you to think about your favorite children's book. If you have a pencil or a pen and some paper with you, you can write it down and you can write about your answers. But because this is just a 1 hour session, usually if we were doing this in person and had more time, I would love for everybody to share what their favorite stories are and why they love them. But because we have some time constraints, I'd like you all to just maybe write down your answers, or just simply think about them and reflect quietly for a moment. So think about your favorite children's book or children's stories. It could be an oral story. And think about why it is your favorite, and think about what you like about it. So we're just going to take a minute to just sit and think, and then we'll move on. So please think about your favorite children's book or your favorite children's story and why you like it, or why it's your favorite. It could be one from your own childhood, or it could be one that you have shared with the children in your care. All right. So whatever your answers were, and whatever the reasons for the book that you chose being your favorite book, all of your answers, I'm sure, really point to something special and something powerful, something really engaging about children's books and children's stories. There is something there about children's stories and children's books. And our job as teachers, parents, and carers of young children is to tap into that special something that makes books so powerful and special, and use these books, use these stories to really maximize children's development and to support children in their development. And particularly now, when children are going through immense changes to their lives and challenges as well because of COVID-19, it's really important for us, I think, to tap into that power of storytelling and stories to support children through this particular time. So I'd like to actually start off this session by sharing with you my favorite children's book, or one of my favorite children's books. And this is Love You Forever by Robert Munsch. This is a very well-known book. It's been around for a long time. It's quite old. I'm sure some of you already know it. But just a little background story about this book. I did not read this book when I was little. I came to this book as an adult. I was a young teacher, and I think I found or discovered this book in my first year as a preschool teacher. And I had a very, very narrow view of what books and storytelling could be for young children. For me, storytelling was about entertaining children. Books were about just engagement, maybe about helping children learn concepts, developing language, and just really books were for kind of pushing children along with their literacy development so that they could eventually learn how to read and love reading. But after I read this book, I began to think more deeply about children's literature. And I began to see children's books and stories as not just entertainment, not just vehicles for language and literacy, but really as something a lot more profound, something that really can speak to people and help them learn about themselves as well as the world around them. Okay, so please join me as I take you on this read aloud of Love You Forever by Robert Munsch. So Love You Forever by Robert Munsch and illustrated by Sheila McGraw. A mother held her new baby and very slowly rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while she held him, she sang, I love you forever, I like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. Now the baby grew, he grew, and he grew, he grew until he was 2 years old, and he ran all around the house, and he pulled all the books off the shelves. He pulled all the food out of the refrigerator, and he took his mother's watch and he flushed it down the toilet. Sometimes his mother would say, this kid is driving me crazy. But at nighttime, when that 2-year-old was quiet, she opened the door to his room, crawled across the floor, looked up over the side of his bed, and if he was really asleep, she picked him up and rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while she rocked him, she sang, I love you forever, I like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. Now that boy grew. He grew and he grew and he grew. He grew until he was 9 years old, and he never wanted to come in for dinner, and he never wanted to take a bath. And when his grandma visited, he always said bad words. Sometimes his mother wanted to sell him to the zoo. But at nighttime, when he was asleep, the mother quietly opened the door to his room, crawled across the floor, and looked up over the side of the bed. If he was really asleep, she picked up that 9-year-old boy and rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while she rocked him, she sang, I love you forever, I like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. Now the boy grew, he grew, and he grew, and he grew, he grew until he was a teenager. And he had strange friends, and he wore strange clothes and listened to strange music. Sometimes the mother felt like she was in a zoo. But at nighttime, when that teenager was asleep, the mother opened the door to his room, crawled across the floor, and looked up over the side of the bed. If he was really asleep, she picked up that great big boy and rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while she rocked him, she sang, I love you forever, I like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. Now that teenager grew, he grew and he grew and he grew. He grew until he was a grown-up man. He left home and got a house across town. But sometimes on dark nights, the mother got into her car and drove across town. And if all the lights in her son's house were out, she opened his bedroom window, crawled across the floor, and looked up over the side of his bed. And if that great big man was really asleep, she picked him up and rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while she rocked him, she sang, I love you forever, I like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. Well, that mother, she got older. She got older and older and older, and one day she called up her son and said, you'd better come see me because I'm very old and sick. So her son came to see her, and when she came in the door, she tried to sing the song. She sang, I love you forever, I like you for always. But she couldn't finish because she was too old and sick. So the son went to his mother and he picked her up and rocked her back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And he sang this song. I love you forever. I like you for always. As long as I'm living, my mommy you'll be. When the son came home that night, he stood for a long time at the top of the stairs. Then he went into the room where his very new baby daughter was sleeping. He picked her up in his arms and very slowly rocked her back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while he rocked her, he sang, I love you forever. I like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. And that's the end of the book. So the reason why this was so powerful, this story was so powerful to me, was because at the time that I discovered it, my mother was quite ill. And so this story, I believe, kind of reflected my own experiences and my own love for my mother. And in that way was very, very powerful. And that's what stories can do. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So storytelling is powerful, period. There's no doubt about it. And why is that? Yes, they have this wonderful, stories have this wonderful ability to reflect back to you your own life, your own experiences, and so much more. When we read stories to young children, there's so much that happens in those moments. And here's a little infographic that I have from Kind Little Humans, which is my project. We make these little infographics for teachers and for parents. And this one is, what do children learn from storytelling? And really, they're learning so much. They learn about virtues. If it's a funny story, they're learning about humor. If it's a story that reflects them, or maybe has a character that looks like them or has a similar experience, they're maybe learning about identity. They learn about other people and they learn empathy. They learn about emotions, imagination. They develop their love for reading through stories. They can make connections in the stories with events in their lives. If they're talking about stories with you or other children, you know, they learn the rules of conversation. If you're sharing a story about your culture or another culture, they're learning about cultural understanding or their own heritage. They could be learning about their community and the world. They're also doing a lot of cognitive work. You know, stories stimulate focus, curiosity, creativity. They can also learn a lot of social skills, communication skills, really build connection, learn about what's real versus what's make-believe. And they really hone their language and literacy skills. And if you're reading books in other languages, for example, if you're reading the book in English or Nepali or Filipino or whatever language that it is, it's exposure to other languages. So if you look at this little infographic, you can really see that, you know, reading one little book or telling one little story might seem like a simple task, but for very, very young children, a story is really a powerhouse for learning and development, for connection as well, and for their emotions as well. So the simple act of just reading a book can do so much for a child's cognitive development, as well as their social and emotional development. So stories are powerful. They can bring us, the reader, or the storyteller, as well as the children we're telling stories to, great pleasure and enjoyment. Stories can really connect us and bring us together, help us bond, help us strengthen our relationships with each other. Stories can really spark thinking and can really spark children's growth. And this is what I want to spend a little bit more time on today, is stories reward us with an understanding of what it means to be human, and stories are windows and mirrors. These last 2 points are really what the story, Love You Forever, what reading that and feeling so much emotion about that book really drove home these last 2 points. That the characters and the stories that we read with children really show children what it means to have feelings, to have experiences, and what it means to be human. And what does it mean when I say, or we say, stories are windows and mirrors? When we say a story is a mirror, a story has the ability to reflect back to us our experiences, our thoughts, our emotions, and therefore a mirror can be a really powerful tool to help us learn about ourselves. When we say stories are windows, windows can give us a glimpse into other people's lives and what other people are going through and feeling and thinking and experiencing. It can take us to other places, and therefore stories are a way to give children a more expanded view of the world and to expand their knowledge, their knowledge of the world around them, and their knowledge of other people. So this line, or this term that stories are windows and mirrors, I believe this was first coined by a woman called Emily Style, who is one of the founders of SEED, which is an organization that really promotes inclusion and equity. And it was later expanded on by Rudine Sims Bishop. So I'm going to read this quote from Rudine Sims Bishop, and I think it really drives home the power of children's stories and why they're so important. Books are sometimes windows, offering views of the world that may be real or imagined, familiar or strange. These windows are also sliding glass doors, and readers have only to walk through in imagination to become part of whatever world has been created or recreated by the author. When lighting conditions are just right, however, a window can also become a mirror. Literature transforms human experience and reflects it back to us. And in that reflection, we can see our own lives and experiences as part of a larger human experience. Reading, then, becomes a means of self-affirmation, and readers often seek their mirrors in books. So when we tell stories to children and when we share stories to children, it can be something that's deeply affirming. And here's another quote about windows and mirrors and why books as windows and mirrors are so important. We read to see two kinds of worlds, our own and the ones we can't imagine. We read to see ourselves reflected and to peek into other people's lives. Our kids need to read about people not like them to expand their horizons and their empathy. So what does it all mean for us as the teachers, parents, and carers of young children who are the ones responsible for exposing them to these stories and these books. How can we harness the power of storytelling? Well, first and foremost, if we want to harness the power of storytelling, we really need to make time and space for stories. In our homes and in our classrooms if we're teachers. Yeah, I've always tried to make sure that stories really have a central part in my curriculum, and that many books are available in my classroom for children, and that there are different times of the day during the school day where they can really just sit down, read a book, either by themselves or with a group. And I think it's important as well at home that children have the opportunity to interact with stories and books as well. The second point here is we need to be intentional in how we choose our stories. And we also need to choose diverse stories. And when it comes to choosing books and stories, these are two questions that I like to use to serve as general guides. So in order to be intentional about choosing stories for children, we need to ask, are children reflected in the stories that I choose? I think it's so wonderful that I think all around the world, I know definitely in Nepal with Rato Bangla Kitab, there is this effort to really make and promote local stories with local characters so that children can really see themselves in books. And I can say it's the same here in the Philippines. Over the past few years, there's really been this burgeoning of local children's literature. You know, I am a product of the 80s. And back then it was harder, much harder to get good quality children's literature published in the Philippines. And a lot of the books that children of my generation read were all from Western countries. And it was very rare to read children's books where the protagonist or the main character was someone who looked like you and had everyday experiences like you. And so it is just so important to choose stories that reflect the experiences, the lives of children. But at the same time, because children also need to be exposed to windows and glimpses of how other people live their lives, it's important to ask ourselves the question, do the stories I choose broaden children's understanding of people and the world? So we want a balance of both. We need a range of, we need to choose a range of books and stories that both reflect children and their experiences, but also broaden their perspective of the world. And that's all so that they're equipped to be in a world of diversity and to develop empathy. Now, let's take everything I've just said and really contextualize it. Yes, stories are so important. They connect us, they build on children's language skills, they help reflect children's experiences so that they can make sense of their experiences. They give them windows and glimpses into how other people live so that they can expand their knowledge of the world around them. What does that mean for us as educators, parents, and carers of young children now, in this very special and particular time where we're in the middle, or hopefully we're not in the middle anymore, hopefully we're at the tail end of this pandemic. Children have undergone a lot of changes and now are suddenly going from having done mostly home learning and Zoom lessons and online lessons, and now are being put back in the physical classroom. And after 2 years of mostly home learning and Zoom classes, are suddenly having managing multiple things of new routines, peers, teachers, and just this whole new way of being every day. So what's the role of literature and children's stories? And how can children's stories be used and harnessed to help children during this time? Because we just have about an hour for today's session, I'm going to focus just on 3 different ways you can use children's literature and the power of children's literature to help young children at this time. The first is to use stories to help children make sense of change and navigate new situations. So I remember, again, when I was a new teacher, I had a mentor, and she always encouraged me every time a child was going through something new and challenging. She would always encourage me to look for a book about that child's experience and read that book with that child. And she would always say, there might be a book about that. And many years later, I still use that same line whenever I'm wondering, how can I help a child who seems to be struggling with a new situation? I ask myself, is there a book that can help them? Because there might be. There are now so many children's books that are out there that really help children with change. And these are just 4 out of, so many books that can help children with change. This is one about moving house. I'll Always Love You is one about losing a pet. And Waiting for a Baby, of course, is a good read for small children who are going through the change of having another addition to the family, which can be, a really big event for a young child. And the Goodbye book is all about saying goodbyes and experiencing loss. During the pandemic, publishers and different groups have come out with books to guide parents and children with the COVID-19 pandemic. This on the right is a kid's guide to coronavirus. This is a free book from the American Psychological Association, I think, and which is downloadable from their website. And these other 2 pictures are from local publishers here in the Philippines who have come out with books about coronavirus and COVID-19 to help children and families. So whenever a child is undergoing change or a new situation that can be very challenging, if we present them with a book about it or read a book with them about it, it can really help them to understand that situation and prepare themselves mentally as well as emotionally for that situation, and can help them understand their own feelings about it and what they can do in that situation. But sometimes there isn't the just right book that fits a child's experience. And something that I really like to do and encourage the preschool teachers that I work with to do is to be authors themselves of children's stories. And if there is an important change in a child's life, teachers are in a unique position to explain that change to that child in child-friendly language, in a way that's just right for that child. So I'm going to share with you next a book or a version of a teacher-made book that I encourage teachers to make early in the pandemic when we were suddenly had switched are adapted
Seems like our presenter is having a network issue. It's Miss Amabel.
Did I disappear for a little bit?
Yes, Miss
Okay.
Amabel.
All right. Well, I was just introducing the story. It's called Learning Together at Home. And this is a teacher-made story to really help children with understanding change. And it's adapted from Our School is Closed for a While, which is written by Leslie Koplow from Bank Street. Ooh, I went all the way to the end. Sorry. Something just happened. Sorry. Okay. Uh-oh.
I think that was the previous one, Miss Amabel.
All right. Sorry about that. All right. So let's read the story together. And the reason why I'm sharing these teacher-made books with you is that I really encourage teachers and parents to use stories that they make themselves with children to help children through this time and any changes that might be challenging for them. Oh, sorry. So when we went to school, we saw our friends and teachers. We played, had snack, went outside, read stories together, and sang songs. Then grown-ups who make the rules for the Philippines said, all of the schools will be closed for a while. They said, there is a virus called COVID-19 going around. COVID-19 is a germ that can make people sick. We want to keep everyone healthy. Everyone should stay home for a while to stay safe and healthy. Saying goodbye to school for a while might feel sad or give us other feelings too. How do you feel? While we are at home, we can play and read stories with our family. When we miss our friends, we can look at pictures of school and make drawings for our friends. We can talk to our grown-ups. We can look at our class website and we will see our teachers and friends on our computers through something called Zoom. Seeing each other on the computer will feel different at first, but we will learn to do it really well. We can sing songs and play games and talk to one another. The grown-ups who make the rules for the Philippines will tell us when the virus has gone away and when it is safe to go back to school. Sometimes it can feel frustrating to be waiting for so long. Your school will be waiting for you. We will come back to school again when it is safe. We will see friends and teachers again. We will play, have snack, go outside, and do more. Teachers will say, we are so happy to see you back at school. For now, we can remember our fun times in school, have fun inside our homes, and see each other on our computers. The end. So this kind of story with very child-friendly and simple language is really a great way to help children through change and really create a very powerful story that's simple, but really reflects exactly what a child is going through in their unique context. So now that children are going back into school, I wonder if parents and teachers can come up with a similar kind of story, except that it explains for children, instead of why they have to stay at home, why they will now be going back to school. Next, I'm going to share with you another teacher-made story that's really great for very, very young children. And we made a version, and the teachers that I worked with made a version of this called Homeschool for the Toddlers that we worked with. And it's, again, an extremely simple teacher-made story with extremely simple language. But what it did for children was it took their experience of stopping physical school and having to stay at home, but it showed them the similarities between home and school and how there would still be continuity between home and school, or school and home, and help children kind of navigate that change and made the change, I guess, less scary or less overwhelming to see that there are similarities between home and school. So this is very simple, a very simple but powerful story for toddlers. And if you are going to make a story like this, I would suggest, instead of using stock images like I did for this version, to actually use pictures with of your students if you have them. We paint at home. Oh, sorry. We paint at school. We paint at home. We draw at school. We draw at home. We build at school. We build at home. We cook at school. We cook at home. We sing and dance at school. We sing and dance at home. We have teachers at school. We have grown-ups at home. We have our friends at school. We have our families at home. We played and had fun at school. We play and have fun at home. The end. So there you go. That's just a very, very simple story that's effective for toddlers in just navigating the change and seeing what's the same and what's slightly different between home and school. So the second way to use stories with children, very young children, preschoolers during this time, is to support them socially and emotionally. Big changes bring up big feelings. And so I think it's great to read stories about those feelings. There are so many books about feelings available out there. And again, if there isn't one easily available for you, with a little, you can get versions online, and you can also make your own. And these are just three of some of my left. How are you peeling is hilarious because it's vegetables making the faces, and children that I've worked with absolutely love it. The one in the middle is by Todd Parr with very great simple illustrations. And The Way I Feel is also a great feelings book for preschoolers. When we help children understand and label their feelings. They become a lot more manageable for young children. And so because this is a time of change, using stories to help children navigate their feelings can be very, very helpful. Also, this big change of going back into physical school for young children can bring up a lot of separation anxiety. So I would also suggest using children's books and stories to help children with their separation anxiety. And again, there are a lot of books out there about saying goodbyes and separating from your parents and going into school. And these are just three very popular ones that I have used in my classrooms and find very, very helpful for young kids. And next, I think another way to use stories to help children with their social skills is by using social stories that are, again, teacher-made. So we anticipate with children coming back to school after being kind of isolated for many, many months and not really having that much peer interaction, is that we will need to scaffold and support children with their play and social skills. And one way that I really love to do this is by using stories or social stories, which you can simply make on your own. There are ones available that you can buy. But again, I really love making stories that really, and I like using pictures of the children in my class. So they literally see themselves in the stories. And they love reading social stories where they can see each other's faces in the books. I also like to use ones where it's just really simple stick figures as well. So whenever it is that you decide to make a story for the children in your class, it can be really, really simple, and there's no need to go crazy with illustrations as well. So this is just a simple story to help children initiate play with each other. And it's called, Can I Play With You? Zia was playing with blocks. Enzo wanted to play with the blocks too. He came up close to Zia. Can I play with you? He asked. Zia thought for a moment. Then she said, okay, I'm building a tower. Enzo said, let's make a tall one. Zia said, okay, let's make it taller than us. Enzo and Zia took turns adding blocks. They stood next to their tower. It was taller than them. The end. And that's it. And so whatever social situation children might need help with, you can create a simple story where they can see themselves in that experience and pick up on what language they can use in that social situation and what they can do in that social situation. And so these are some titles of some social stories that I have used in the classroom and that have helped children with waiting. I once came up with a story called Waiting is Hard, which just showed all the different situations in a classroom where children might need to wait. And the text was, waiting is hard, but everybody waits. Waiting is hard, but everybody waits. And that was the story. Another one was, Are You Okay? To help children learn what to do. Are You Okay? Was a story about two children who get into a conflict. And at the end of it, one checks in with the other one and asks, "Are you okay?" And this is a social story to help children learn what to do when they might have conflict with another child. And the last one is called "I'm Still Using This," which is, you know, a simple story about two kids who want to play with the same toy. And one thing they can say is, "I'm still using this." And the other child needs to find another toy. So these are just simple ways you can harness stories to help with supporting children socially and emotionally as the big change comes up with starting school again. And lastly, the third one for today's session is, let's use stories at this time to help children experience joy, the joy of really learning about the world around them and connecting with each other. So there are so many fun and amazing stories out there. And my suggestion for this kind of difficult time is to choose stories that bring everybody joy and that build relationships in the classroom, help children connect with one another. And they can be books, physical books, you know, or they can be stories using puppets, which are always enjoyable and children always love. And they can be interactive stories as well. The more joy, fun, and connection that you create with your, or promote with your storytelling, I think the easier it will be for this big transition of being back to school. And that will really help build the relationship between teachers and students with each other. So we're going to end today's session with a little bit of interactive storytelling. And this is something that I've done with kids that always helps build connection and always kind of brings joy to the group. And this kind of silly interactive story is just told with your voice and with your hands. And I found that children like to improvise, make changes to the stories and just to this story and just tell it over and over again in different ways. Does anyone know the story of Mr. Wiggle and Mr. Waggle? No? Okay, well, it's something that you can do with all little kids and they'll really love it. And it is really great for just building connection. So please join me. We're going to do this together. All you need to do is put one hand up like this and the other hand up like this. So this is Mr. Wiggle. And this is Mr. Waggle. Mr. Wiggle and Mr. Waggle lived on opposite ends of a place, and in between them there were many, many hills. They each lived on top of a hill, and they each lived in houses that looked exactly the same. This is Mr. Wiggle's house, and to go inside his house, he simply opens the door, goes inside, and closes the door. And this is Mr. Waggle's house, and it's exactly the same. To go inside, he just opens the door, goes inside, closes the door. Now, one day, Mr. Wiggle really wanted to play. So he opened the door to his house, he ran outside, closed the door to his house, and then went down the hill and up the hill and down the hill and up the hill and down the hill and up the hill and down the hill and up the hill till he got to Mr. Waggle's house. Oh, Mr. Waggle, come out and play with me. Nobody came out. Knock, knock, knock. Mr. Waggle, are you home? No answer. Maybe he was sleeping. Mr. Wiggle was disappointed. but he decided to go home and try again another day. So he went down the hill and up the hill and down the hill and up the hill and down the hill and up the hill until he got home, and he opened the door to his house, went inside, closed the door, and went to sleep. Now, the very next morning, Mr. Wiggle woke up and said, "Oh, I really want to play." So he opened the door to his house, ran outside, closed the door to his house, went down the hill and up the hill and down the hill and up the hill and down the hill and up the hill and called, "Mr. Wiggle, come out and play." No answer. He knocked hard on the door. Knock, knock, knock. Still no answer. He was disappointed. And he went down the hill and up the hill and down the hill and up the hill and down the hill and up the hill. He opened the door to his house, went inside, closed the door. Now, the very next day, at the exact same time, Mr. Wiggle and Mr. Waggle had an idea to play with each other. They opened the doors to their houses, ran outside, closed their doors, went down the hill and up the hill and down the hill and up the hill, and they met each other in the middle, and they were so happy to see one another. They gave each other big, big hugs, and then together they rolled down the hill, ran back up, rolled down the hill, ran back up, rolled down, ran up, rolled down, ran up, rolled down, ran up, until they were both out of breath, but they were so, so happy. Since they were tired, they decided to say goodbye. They had had a really good time playing. They gave each other hugs. They said goodbye. They went down the hill and up the hill and down the hill and up the hill until they both got home. They opened the doors to their homes. They went inside. They closed the doors and went to sleep. The end. So that's it. That's Mr. Wiggle and Mr. Waggle, and I hope you enjoyed it if it was new to you, and hope you enjoyed it even if you already knew it. So we're coming to a close. It's almost the end of our session. Again, I just want to end with a little bit of reflection and just some reflection questions. I've listed them here so you can take them with you whenever you are thinking about stories and how to use them with your little ones. Here are some questions to guide you. One, how am I making time and space for stories? Am I selecting stories that reflect children and their experiences? Am I selecting diverse stories that broaden children's understanding of the world? How am I using stories to support children socially and emotionally? How am I using stories to connect children, to connect with children and help children connect with each other? So that's all for our 1 hour session for today. Thank you all and happy storytelling with your children. I all hope you took something from this short session. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Ms. Amabel. Thank you for sharing beautiful thoughts and for being an inspiration for many of us to read and also to create stories. As we are aware, the storytelling does so much for child's cognitive as well as social and emotional development. And stories are, like you said, windows and mirrors for infinity of inspiration and imagination. So I must mention that you are a sensational storyteller, Ms. Amabel. Thank you. Well, we are a few minutes ahead of time, but we can still take some questions. So I would like to request our participants to please type questions if you have any. Please type the questions so that I can read them for you all. questions and comments? Oh, it seems like our participants not have question. I'm sure we, even right till now, I'm engrossed in your stories. Okay, we have one. Yes, from
well, if
Iduna. Yes.
Oh.
When choosing stories, do you recommend taking large consideration based on my child's preference? So preferences, that's a question. When choosing
absolutely. Yes, the more your child will be more engaged if the story is connected to their preferences and to the things that they're interested in. But of course, you do want a balance. It's all about balance within these stories and choosing, being intentional about having a balance of stories that your child loves, but stories that also expand your child's view of themselves and of others. So we don't ever want to be kind of stuck where we're always reading the same stories about the same topics. You as the adult, of course, know best. You do want those stories that really spark their interest and are connected to their preferences. But you do want to keep introducing them to new stories that could have also some tie to their preference, but are different in some way, so that you're always stretching your child's learning.
Yes, it's true. So, Ms. Amabel, we have another query. Ms. Lakshmi Shrestha wants to know how we can get the materials presented through the presentation here. So, do we have access online? Do we get it?
Do you have, how can we do this? I mean, I can hand over the presentation to Ratu Bangla, and then do you have the participants' email addresses for the slides, or?
I'm sure we have. So we need to figure out, we are going to ask the team, maybe we have. Thank you, Ms. Amabel, for sharing. And yes, I think those are the queries. And well, there are many thank you notes. They thoroughly enjoyed the session. And they want to thank you for this wonderful session.
Okay, well, my pleasure. I'm so happy to have been able to do this with you all. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the Literature Festival. I know there are so many amazing workshops lined up and so many amazing speakers. And I just want to wish everybody all the best. It's a big time in education where for the first time, teachers and parents are navigating learning at home and then going back to school and then learning at home and then going back to school. And so I wish you all the very, very best.
Thank you, Ms. Amabel, for your valuable time and for your remarkable session. Well, I'll also like to take this opportunity to thank my team, Ms. Manju, in logistics, Ms. Nilima as a tech, and Kristen sir for recording this video. And special thanks to Ms. Monita and the BSM team for all your support. And thank you to all the participants for joining us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Jilpa. Goodbye.
Thank you.